there's a lot of activity right around this 90 to 100,000 level, and it's natural. 100,000 level it's a mental level for investors, and so to get through that, that's a big deal. So, but we could push through it, and I almost expect us to push through it and then immediately pull back down underneath, and then struggle to get through it, because there'd be a lot of shorts sitting there, just trying to take advantage of that mental wall. So I do expect it to pull back a little bit, but long term, meaning end of year, early next year, I expect it to push through 100 and be on its way.
Bitcoin's long-term prospects remain solid, as growing acceptance and regular 4-year cycles help to strengthen its resilience. Despite market volatility, Bitcoin's value remains strong, setting it for future development and adoption. Currently trading above $90,000, its potential as a value store and inflation hedge is becoming more widely recognized. This optimistic perception is shared by specialists such as James Lavish, who spoke with Kitco News about Bitcoin's potential. Lavish noted the cryptocurrency's 4-year cycles and growing acceptance, predicting volatility but ultimately believing in its long-term value. James Lavish stated that some gold industry veterans are worried about adopting Bitcoin after a 30-year war. He stated that Bitcoin is tough to comprehend, taking him years to grasp despite being an institutional investor. Lavish noted that while hard money advocates believe in Bitcoin, some people find it difficult to understand. He highlighted Bitcoin's 4-year cycles, claiming that the market is nearing the conclusion of its consolidation period. This points at a clear future for Bitcoin. Its evolution as a cornerstone of the financial system is just beginning, and the ride is bound to be nothing short of mind-blowing. So, what can we expect from Bitcoin in 2025 and beyond? Let's watch clips from the interview for further insights into James Lavish's conversation with Kitco News. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more content. Enjoy the video.
There are some old timers, OGs in the gold industry that have been doing this for so long. All right, so the way it's been described to me by Larry Lepard, is one of my partners in my hedge fund, is they've been fighting a battle here for like 30 years, and it's finally coming due. And so when they hear about Bitcoin and they hear it's digital gold and it's the next thing, I think what goes to their mind is, I don't want to fight this battle for another 30 years with just a new asset, So that's one thing that's out there. The second thing is just, it's difficult to understand. Bitcoin's not easy to understand. It took me a long time, but I was an institutional investor for almost 30 years. And it took me a good 3 or 4, it took the third time I finally heard about it and I started to study it rather than just dismiss it. Yeah. And it's a difficult concept to get your head around. And then once I started to study it, it took me a while to really get my head around what it meant and why it was a sea change in finance and for hard money. But the reality is, gold and Bitcoin, the people who follow gold and Bitcoin, hard money enthusiasts in particular, they believe in everything. They're like super aligned with all their thoughts and reasoning and understanding what's going on with the debt and the expansion of the money supply and how this can be protective for them. I think it was well received. I haven't talked to too many people about it yet, but there were a lot of people taking photos of my slides, and I could see people super engaged. And then there were some audible size and my whole thing is like, don't be hyperbolic about the prospect of Bitcoin. Just lead people to understand why it's different, why it's so important, and help them get to the point where they really want to dig in themselves and do some more research themselves and get comfortable with it. It takes a minute. And so, but I believe that there's a lot of people in here who are super open to it. We operate in 4-year cycles, as we've seen. It's a small data set. There's only a few cycles that we can look back to, but that's what has happened in the history of Bitcoin. It's only been around for 15 years. But we are getting at the end of this consolidation phase of this cycle. And so people expected for that to that consolidation to kind of finally close down, and then for us to get some price momentum through and start reaching all-time highs again. Coincidentally, people talk about it being tied to the halving and how it has miners and the price of creating the reward and all that. But in reality, it might be more tied to elections now and just the uncertainty around elections. So getting through that election was a huge inflection point. It took out a lot of uncertainty from the market. Now we have Senator Lummis from Wyoming who's pushing the Bitcoin Act. Yeah. This is a big deal.
Huge. Strategic reserve in the U.S. would be massive.
Yeah. Exactly.
But selling gold to get there.
Maybe. Selling some of it, not all of it. But acquiring enough Bitcoin that would match what the gold reserves are now. That's the idea, I believe. And so, but buying 1 million Bitcoin, so just think through that for a minute. Now, if you're going to buy 1 million Bitcoin, 200,000 a year for the U.S. Treasury, what is every single country around the world going to do? They're going to think, well, that's 5% of the float right there. That's 5%. If we want to keep up and be a G20, and Bitcoin really does end up being a strategic asset for the world, for a store of value, then we better get in there and buy some too, or we're not going to be able to be one of the top 20 holders.
James Lavish discussed Bitcoin's outlook, arguing that it remains a wonderful risk-reward investment in the long run. He predicts volatility, with a potential rise above $100,000 followed by a pullback. Lavish pointed out that Bitcoin is still in its early stages, with a market valuation of $1.7 trillion, accounting for only 0.2% of worldwide investable assets. Bitcoin has incredible momentum, despite being only 1/10 the size of gold, and has grown significantly since its start 15 years ago. At $90,000, Bitcoin represents only 2% of the whole investment world, leaving room for expansion. Its potential as a store of value and inflation hedge is becoming more widely acknowledged. Let's go back to the interview and watch more clips to gain insights from James Lavish.
Is it FOMO? Is it too late to get in? Are you buying the haircut? What's the outlook here? I mean, where do we go?
Yeah, it's a good question. I get that all the time now from people I told to buy it when it was in the 20s.
Of course. Yeah.
But I believe that it's still a tremendous risk-reward investment for the long term. Will we see volatility? Fully expect it. We could bump up here against 100,000. I mean, we're right at 99.2 right now, and so we could bump up against that level, kind of push through, have a lot of shorts pile on, and then have it collapse back down into the 90s or even in the 80s. I don't know. Bitcoin is volatile. So I expect volatility. I still expect volatility, but I expect it to really have come into its own this year with some of these catalysts.
Okay, so a lot of support there on the technical side too. I mean, it looks like it's overbought.
It looks like it. Of course it does. It always does when it goes into this phase, right? I mean, I look back at the historical charts and it just blows my mind. I haven't lived through a bull market because I came into this industry late. I came in after 2020, early 2021. And so I came in right as we were entering that awful bear market. But when you look at those charts, it's just mind-blowing. You're like surely that can't happen again. There's a lot of activity right around this 90 to 100,000 level, and it's natural. 100,000 level it's a mental level for investors. And so to get through that, that's a big deal. So, but we could push through it, and I almost expect us to push through it and then immediately pull back down underneath and then struggle to get through it because there'd be a lot of shorts sitting there just trying to take advantage of that mental wall. So I do expect it to pull back a little bit, but long term, meaning end of year, early next year, I expect it to push through 100 and be on its way, barring any black swan event or economic event or the Fed coming out and saying we're going to raise rates. I mean, that would be a market shock. So, but status quo, I do expect it to just continue on forward because we have a number of catalysts that we haven't even discussed yet that are right here on the horizon or happening.
How much of that is the war risk?
I think that that's hard to gauge, right? Because war risk will help gold, obviously. It really depends on what happens with the dollar and rates. Because risk assets typically don't do well. The question is, how close are we to cresting over that? We have to emerge. Bitcoin has to emerge out of risk and into risk off. From risk on to risk off, as people understand that, oh, this is a place to store my value for a long time. Just forget about the volatility. This is a place to tuck it away and trust that it's going to be okay. Much like gold, the difference is you can access it anywhere around the world. So if something happens in your home country, if you're in a hostile area, you can just pick up and leave, know your 12 words, and your Bitcoin, you're not taking it with you. It's everywhere. It's wherever you go. As long as you can access the internet, you can get to it. Bitcoin is just getting started. It's right about $1.7, $1.8 trillion asset right now in this chart, and I'll give it to you. We'll pull it up here. But this is my chart. It's a little bit different than the one that you've seen going around. I adjusted some of those for my current projections of where the assets are. But there are $900 trillion of global assets, investable assets. Bitcoin is currently 1.7 trillion of those, which is 0.02% of total assets. It's 1/10 the size of gold. So it has a long way to go here. But at $90,000, it's still only 0.2% of the entire investment universe. Now remember, it's 1/10 the size of gold, but gold's been around for thousands of years. Bitcoin's been around for 15. This is tremendous momentum.
James Lavish laid out MicroStrategy's Bitcoin portfolio and approach. MicroStrategy has a record 386,700 Bitcoins, and Lavish explained that the company's innovative strategy allows it to issue bonds at nearly zero interest rates. Lavish cautioned that shorting MicroStrategy stock is a risky move because the firm has momentum and can continue to issue bonds and buy Bitcoin. Regarding the forecast for 2024 and 2025, James Lavish stated that the next administration is projected to be more pro-Bitcoin, and the SEC has permitted options trading on Bitcoin ETFs. Lavish also addressed the banking crisis and choke point 2.0, which he feels will no longer be an issue. Lavish pointed out the significance of educating and decriminalizing Bitcoin. He predicts that Bitcoin will grab allocations from gold, stocks, bonds, and real estate. James Lavish argued that Bitcoin offers a high rate of return and is liquid and trustworthy. He anticipates Bitcoin to reach $1.3 million per coin, accounting for 3% of global assets during the next 7 years. Lavish also mentioned the Citron article and the short position in MicroStrategy shares. He believes the premium on MicroStrategy's shares will eventually fall, but it's a risky play given the company's speed. James Lavish also stated that MicroStrategy's strategy is not long-term sustainable, although it is currently effective. He emphasized the necessity of recognizing Bitcoin's potential as a store of value and inflation hedge, and advised investors to conduct research and allocate a percentage of their portfolio to Bitcoin. As we conclude, what do you think are the most significant factors that will influence Bitcoin's price in the upcoming months, and how are you positioning yourself? Please drop your thoughts in the comments below, share this video, and hit your thumbs on the like button. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.